Hey y'all! So today we're going to go back into chapter 14 and we're going to be finishing up the second stage called the dismemberment, where she's going into the symbolism of the maiden losing her hands in the story, The Handless Maiden. So I hope that you enjoyed today's presentation. I hope you're doing good today. I hope you're having a good day. And I just hope that I can represent the material in a way that gets the wheels turning for you. That's always my goal. I never want to tell you how to perceive things and what to believe. I just want to give you some things that will prompt the process within your own mind to discover what's right and true for you. So let's go ahead and dive in and see what we can find out. So now she's talking about the maiden losing her hands. It says the devil's goal is to cause the daughter to lose her hands. That is her psychic ability to grasp, to hold, to help herself or others. So this is such an incredible story, isn't it? Everything that this poor girl goes through to ultimately get to where she is in the end, which ultimately is a beautiful place, right? So that's inspiring when you're looking through the lens of the life-death life cycle. But it's just incredible everything she goes through, and yet you never see her panic, you know? Isn't that wild? So I know it's just a story, but still. So let's go ahead. She says the fathering element of the psyche is not mature, cannot hold its power against this intense predator, and so chops off his daughter's hands. So that's a powerful sentence right there, right? So the part of our psyche when we're naive cannot hold its power against an intense predator, right? And I view this as we are not firmly planted. We're not firmly rooted in trusting that inner guidance. You see what I'm saying? It's there, and it's even screaming at us through red flags and recognition of those red flags. But because we haven't developed that trust yet, it's like it's just a little, sprout at this point. You see what I'm saying? Like a baby intuition. And so we have to, view this like watering a garden. You see what I'm saying? It has to grow. The trust that we have in ourselves, in order to be able to stand up against and not be targeted by a predator, not be taken advantage of by a predator, not be manipulated and exploited by a predator, that part of us has to grow. It has to mature. So I like how she uses specifically the word mature, right? That part of the psyche has not matured yet. Like I said, I just view it like a little sprout. And so, yes. So yeah, he chops off his daughter's hands. He attempts to plead for his daughter, but the price, destruction of the entire creative force of the psyche, is too high. The daughter submits to the desecration, and the blood sacrifice is completed. That which in ancient times denoted a full descent to the underworld. So interesting, isn't it? All the parallels in these different stories. In the act of losing her hands, the woman makes her way into La Selva Subterranea, the underworld initiation ground. If this were a Greek play, the tragic chorus would now cry out and weep, for even though the act causes her to learn immense power, at this time a woman's innocence has been slain and will never return in the same way again. So we are forever changed. That's important to move forward in understanding the symbolism of the hands, okay? The silver-lipped axe comes from another archaeological layer of the old wild feminine, in which silver is the special color of the spirit world and of the moon. The silver-lipped axe is so called for in olden times it was made of forged blackened steel, and its blade was sharpened by whetstone till it turned a bright silverish color. In the old Minoan religion, the axe of the goddess was used to mark the ritual path of the initiate and to mark the places designated as holy. I have heard from 2 old Croatian storytellers that in the old women's religions, a small ritual axe was used to sever the umbilical cord of a newborn, freeing the child from the underworld so it could live in this world. The silver of the axe is related to the silver hands that will eventually belong to the maiden. Here is a tricky passage, for it represents the idea that the removal of psychic hands may be ritual. So, the mistake I was making when I was reading this, I'm going to go ahead and share this with you, so in case you're going down that same path with your mind. When I was, thinking about the hands representing the psychic part of us, I think it's only part of the psychic part of us, and I think that once we read a little bit further, you'll make that that discovery as well. So I'm still processing and I'm processing with you, so I would love to hear your thoughts after you watch the video. But she says, we can understand the removal of psychic hands in much the same way the symbol was understood by the ancients. Because, I skipped a little bit here. She's just talking about trees, and it's commonplace to prune trees, right? Going back to that concept of gardening, it's commonplace and sometimes necessary, and here's another thought too. A lot of times, what's cut off of a plant, like a flowering bush, for example, is the dead part. We cut the dead part off to allow for new growth. I think we've talked about this before, but it's okay. We can bring it back up. It's applicable here too. And so, that new part is depending and waiting on us to remove the old dead part. So that's another way to look at this, another lens, because like it just said, her innocence is forever gone. So that removal of the hands that she's calling the psychic hands in the story could be the innocent, trusting part of our psyche. Maybe the part of our psyche that's placing the trust externally in another person as opposed to or before trusting ourselves. So it's that pruning process, and it's ultimately a process, right? So let's see where it's going to go. Let's keep reading. We can understand the removal of psychic hands in much the same way the symbol was understood by the ancients. In Asia, the celestial axe was used to cut one away from the unillumined self. So interesting. So like the naive part of you, like getting rid of that. This motif of cutting as initiation is central to our story. If in our modern societies, the hands of the ego must be sundered in order to regain our wild office, our feminine senses, then go they must in order to take us away from all seductions of meaningless things within our reach. Whatever it is that we can hold on to in order not to grow. That's powerful. Yes, like crutches, old habits that are not good for us, distractions. If it is so that the hands must go for a while, then so be it. Let them go. It's almost like they're obstacles, like they're serving as a block to what's meant for us, right? A block to our true destiny, that can only come to fruition if we get in tune and in touch with our inner knowing and trusting it too. That's a big piece of it. So then she goes back into the concept of like pruning, and she talks about storms and how storms are sometimes called cutting storms or reaper storms, as in the Grim Reaper. And then she talks about, entire families coming out from their root cellars, to see what's left after a storm and picking up the pieces, and how, things are changed. Things are, a lot of times after a big and powerful storm, things are just dismantled. She uses that word. She says, there is a loving family like this. Remember, the family that she's talking about is going out and picking up the pieces, right? So it's like we become fragmented when our world's like shaken up, when we come into this awareness. And so the paradigms we had in place about how the world operates, how people are, you know, and that they're predominantly good and good-hearted with good intentions, that's been totally shaken up and fragmented. So it's like putting pieces back together, but putting them back together in a way that is true, in a way that you understand what's true in the world, what's true about humanity, and that we are different. There is a loving family like this, waiting for the maiden in the underworld, as we shall see. In this metaphor of cutting off the hands, we see that something will come of it. In the underworld, whenever a thing is not able to live, it is taken down and cut apart to be used in another way. This woman of the story is not old, not sick, yet she must be dismantled, for she cannot be the way she has been anymore, right? Yet forces are waiting for her to help her heal. By cutting off her hands, the Father deepens the descent, hastens the dissolution, the difficult loss of all one's dearest values, which mean everything. The loss of vantage point, the loss of horizon lines, the loss of one's bearings about what one believes and for what reason. In Aboriginal rites worldwide, the idea is definitely to confuse the ordinary so the mystical can easily be introduced to the initiates. That's so incredible, isn't it? It's like that numinosity can't shine through, can't take root within us and shine through and guide us without our naive aspect, our naive paradigm of how the world operates just being shattered to pieces. It's like both truths can't operate in this instance at the same time. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, I love that. The idea is definitely to confuse the ordinary so the mystical can easily be introduced to the initiates. Wow. Yeah. So then she just goes into talking about, she's elaborating on that, different people she's known, and expanding on that symbolism here, even talking about statues and hands, and with the palms facing, like for example, it says the hands of the shepherds and the wise men, or of Mary and Joseph, are all extended with palms facing the divine child, as though the child were a light that could be received up through the skin of the palms. Just really interesting things like that you're going to find throughout the book. She says the power of hands is recorded throughout history. Yeah. As women, we touch many people. We know our palm is a kind of sensor. I don't know that we've ever, I know I haven't ever consciously thought of that, but when you're reading it, it's kind of like, oh, that kind of rings true. You know, sometimes if you're having a feeling about someone, but you're not really sure, if they reach out and touch you, it's like, okay, sometimes that's all it takes for you to, you know, to get that clarity, that intuitive clarity, you know. And so she talks about whether in a hug or a pat or just a touch on the shoulder, we take a reading of the persons we touch. If we are connected to like a sabe, we know what another human feels by sensing them with our palms. Yeah. So I really appreciate her talking about that, because just so many unique things discussed in this book that you don't hear in other places, like a deeper meaning to a hug, you know? It's just incredible. Hands are not only receivers, but transmitters. Right, so it works both ways, right? When one shakes a person's hand, one can send a message. And often, unconsciously, does so by pressure, intensity, duration, and skin temperature. So that's the unconscious part, you know, in our body language. Persons who consciously or unconsciously intend meanness have touches that feel as though they are poking holes in the psychic soul body of the other. Yeah. At the other psychological pole, hands laid upon a person can soothe, comfort, remove pain, and heal. Yeah, I thought that was cool. The predator of the psyche knows all about the deep mystery associated with hands. In many parts of the world, an intensely pathological way of showing inhumanity is to kidnap and cut off the hands of a victim, to dismember the human feeling, seeing, and healing function. The killer does not feel, so he does not wish for his victim to feel either. This is exactly the intention of the devil. Wow. So it's almost like these people who operate without empathy are that they're just living this way, you know? And it's incredible that they are repelled by any expression that we may have of, you know, authenticity, which is shown through emotions a lot of times. And these people just are repelled by that. I mean, I've even seen a narcissist be repelled by prayer or, you know, joy, laughter. And it's an odd thing to witness, I'll tell you that. It says, this is exactly the intention of the devil, for the unredeemed aspect of the psyche does not feel. And its insane envy of those who do, and in its insane envy of those who do, it is driven to a cutting hatred. Wow. So there's envy, there's jealousy, which we know this with these people who simultaneously want to destroy us and also become us, because they mimic so much of who we are. It feels like a stolen identity at the deepest level. It's just such a bizarre thing to experience. But yes, it's great to find people who understand, because a lot of people don't understand unless they've been through it. I can tell you that. So this is interesting. It says, when we say a woman's hands are cut off, we mean she is bound away from self-comfort, from immediate self-healing, so very helpless to do anything except follow the age-old path. So it is proper that we continue to weep during this time. It is our simple and powerful protection against a demon so hurtful that none of us can fully comprehend its motive. Right? Yes. We have to be patient with ourselves through the healing process, through the awakening process, through integrating these hard truths into our new paradigm that's of existence, of humanity, of people. As we're putting pieces back together, we just need to be patient with ourselves and understand that, you know, it is a process that's step by step, that's a little by little kind of thing. So she says, in the story, the young woman cries and cries all over her stumps, and the devil is repelled by some sort of force field around her. Exactly. He cannot seize her as he had intended. Here, tears are the thrown object, the watery wall that keeps out the devil, right? Yeah. Not because the devil is moved or made soft by them. He is not. But because there is something about the purity of true tears that causes the devil's power to be broken. So as long as we're operating in alignment with our intuition, then that authenticity is going to shine through, and it will repel people. And to watch it repel people can be shocking sometimes. But that's part of how you know if someone is right for you or not, you know? Who you're aligned with and who you're not aligned with. So ultimately, that discernment is going to be a huge blessing in our life. She says, crying is good. It is a right, or it is right. And now the maiden's life, as she has known it, her understanding of life to this point is over, and she goes down to another level of the underworld. As we continue in her footsteps, we go onward, even though we are vulnerable and so peeled of ego protection, like a tree skinned of its bark. Yet we are powerful, for we have learned to sling the devil across the yard. Yeah. At this time, we see in our lives that no matter what we do, our ego plans slip from our grasp. And that's a good thing, right? There will be a change in our lives, a big one. No matter what nice plans the little temperamental conductor ego has for the next movement, our own powerful destiny begins to rule our lives. Not the mill, not the sweeping, not the sleeping. Exactly. So this is interesting. It says, it is a time when all that we value loses its lilt. Jung reminds us of the term used by Heraclitus. I don't know how to pronounce this. I'll drop it down here. And the term is Enantiodromia. I hope I'm saying that right. Meaning to flow backward. But this flowing backward can be more than a regression into the personal unconscious. It can be a heartfelt return to workable ancient values, more deeply held ideas. So just simplicity. You know, if you apply this to like actual actions in life, things in the real world, it's like I mentioned before, just returning to the basics, the simple way of living. And so just taking that concept and putting it here. Yeah, I thought that was cool. It says, if we understand the stage of the initiation of endurance as a step backward, it must also be considered a step 10 leagues down and back into the realm of wild woman. All this causes the devil to throw his rump over his shoulder and stomp off. I love it. It's like he knows he's no longer welcome. You know what I'm saying? He was never welcome, but he gets it now. And so I feel like, you know, we're going to be tested less and less, because it's just going to be obvious that we're not a target anymore to these people with bad intentions. It says the psychic body has lost its precious hands. It is true, but the rest of the psyche will compensate for the loss. We still have feet that know the way, a soul mind with which to see far, breasts and belly to sense with. Just like the exotic and enigmatic belly goddess Balbo, who represents the deep instinctual nature of women and who also has no hands. With this incorporeal and uncanny body, we go forward. We are about to make the next descent. Yes. So we're deepening our trust in our true and knowing part of ourselves, right? We've always been authentic, but now we know how to be guarded. And we have this situational awareness where we know when to pull back energetically and when to be guarded and not cast our pearls. And then we know how to discern who we can align with and let our guard down with, and enjoy peace with. So, and laughter and all the good things, right? So that's the end of that section. The next section is called the third stage, the wandering. And this is where in the story, you know, the father has deep regret, and he's promising his daughter, you know, all these riches, and she's just like, no, it doesn't suit me. Remember the concept of returning to simplicity? So she's like, no, it doesn't suit me. So she wants to just go on about her way and live as a beggar, with her hair all matted and a mess and everything. So it's called the third stage, the wandering, for a reason. So I'm really curious to see where she's going to go with this. I actually have the highlights from where I read this a while back. And so it's interesting. I'm going to read it again, obviously. And I've noticed that sometimes I read my old highlighted parts and sometimes I don't, because you know, when you read it multiple times, sometimes you get whatever you need for that stage of your life, and sometimes it's just different parts that resonate with you now that you have experience and you can see things with new eyes, right? So I hope again that you enjoy this. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey, and I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again very soon.